So let's talk about Horizon Zero Dawn. Is it good? Is it not good? Well, after 40 plus hours of gameplay, I can comfortably say, yeah, it's pretty damn good. It does have its flaws though. So let's take a look. Graphics. Are the graphics any good? That's a dumbass question. I'm sorry. The graphics are stunning. This is easily the best looking game on the PS4. All right, we're talking a rock solid 30 FPS, 1080p game. And if you have a PS4 Pro, this is the game to demonstrate how powerful that system really is, because you get a rock solid 30 FPS even at 4K. Now I admit, it's not really 4K, but it's pretty damn close, and most people aren't going to be able to tell the difference. Does the 4K make a huge difference, graphically speaking? Kind of. It's not the most dramatic bump in resolution you'll ever see, but it does make a noticeable difference. Is it necessary? Probably not. The HDR, however, is massively significant. It's not the most in-your-face use of HDR technology, but if you have a 4K TV and you play this game even on standard PS4 like I did with HDR enabled, you will see a massive, massive difference. And it is pretty impressive. The animation is, for the most part, really good. The machines especially are gorgeously detailed, gorgeously menacing, and yet just beautiful to watch as they graze. Character animation is pretty good for the most part. The character models are incredibly detailed, and they look, as a total package, like something out of a movie. Some of the animations can be a bit stiff. Aloy in particular, when she's talking, is not terribly nuanced. If that's the worst you can say about the animations though, that's pretty good. The sound is very well done. It's incredibly immersive. Ambient noise, footsteps, the wind rustling, the plant life, the sound of the machines as they stalk you, all of it is really, really good. Really sticks you into this world. Only complaint I have is that sometimes dealing with machines is problematic because the sound field is, I don't know how to say this, kind of narrow, if that makes any sense. Because you don't have an easy way of knowing where the animals are, where the machines are, you have to rely on the sound. And sometimes the sound field makes it difficult to pinpoint exactly where something is. But hey, that's why you've got the focus. The music, top-notch. It's both epic and intimate, which is really important because it really well reflects the balance in the story, in the narrative, which I'll come to in a minute. Voice acting, let's face it, voice acting in video games is always a mixed bag. Even in the best of video games, you've got some voice actors that are just incredibly, incredibly bad. Do we have some of those here? Yeah. Ashley Birch is good, not great, as Aloy. I've never been a huge fan of her. I know she is talented. I know she has done some good work, but she doesn't bring a lot to Aloy, especially in times where Aloy really needs to be emotional. So there's that. Some of the other characters, especially the bit players, yeah, they're pretty bad at times. There is one especially egregious case where it genuinely sounds like the voice acting is being synthesized, and it turns out it's not. The performance was really that bad. But overall, it wasn't terrible. It was hit and miss, as it often is. Story. Well, the writing is pretty good for the most part. There weren't any times when I just rolled my eyes and said, oh, who the hell writes this shit? For the most part, very naturalistic dialogue, sometimes a little bit hammy, sometimes a little bit corny. That's to be expected in any game. The narrative itself, though, is strange. The world story, which is not Aloy's story, but the narrative of the larger world, is pretty cliche. It's one more post-apocalyptic science fiction thing. Basically, it feels like a diluted down version of Assassin's Creed, which isn't a great thing. Aloy's personal journey, on the other hand, is much better. It's underdeveloped, but it is emotionally engaging. It's not as emotional as it wants to be. Clearly, Guerrilla Games was going for a much more emotional story for Aloy, but it's good enough to get us through the entire game. And the ending of the game is very surprising because it's not focused on the big picture, but rather on Aloy and on what it was she was after this entire time. I don't want to spoil it, but I came out of the game very, very happy with the ending. As for the gameplay, this is where I have some serious problems. It's not that anything is actually bad, because on the whole, Horizon Zero Dawn is really good, but the gameplay is essentially Witcher 3 light. And by that I mean Guerrilla clearly played Witcher 3, Guerrilla clearly enjoyed Witcher 3, Guerrilla clearly wanted to make Witcher 3 with robots. They didn't succeed on any level. This is not an RPG, despite the leveling system, despite the skill tree, despite the manipulation of weapons and armor. All of it is very, very dilute. This is an RPG for people who have never played RPGs, people who don't like RPGs, people who want to say, oh yes, I've played a deep game. The people who liked Witcher 3 probably are not going to like this game. There's not much depth to it. As far as the missions are concerned, there's not a lot to say. It's more of the same. Go here, kill, talk, repeat. Get some experience points, which ultimately end up being kind of meaningless. There's a stupid level 50 level cap. You still get experience points, but the level is capped at level 50 for reasons I still don't understand. I never understand why they put level caps in these kind of games. As far as choice is concerned, in The Witcher 3, choice, your actions, your decisions throughout the game world really affected the game world. It affected missions, it affected how people thought of you, it did how people talked to you, how they responded to you. Here, you do have choice in how you respond to certain characters, but none of it means anything. These are choices and responses that are absolutely pointless. Occasionally, very rarely did I come across this, but occasionally you have a choice and your response will lock you out of a potential side quest. Very, very seldom did that actually happen, and I have a feeling that wasn't really supposed to happen. Might have been an oversight, but it happened. But it didn't affect anything else, so I don't really care. This game also suffers from the same thing that every open world game suffers from, which is pointless collectibles. There's a lot of stuff to go and collect, and it doesn't add anything. You've got mechanical flowers, which have bits of poetry, haikus and sonnets, and they're kind of nice. None of it's particularly well written. Some of the haikus are, but the sonnets aren't. Ditto goes for the wide array of weapons and armor. There's a lot of weaponry to collect, and most of it is completely useless. I went through this game and collected a whole bunch of a whole bunch of weapons, and I ended up using 2 weapons 95% of the time. That other 5% of the time is when I thought the other weapons might have a use. They don't. You just need your standard bow and a sharpshooting bow, essentially a sniper bow, a focused bow. Other than that, not a lot of significance to the additional weaponry. Same thing goes with the armor. In fact, the armor is actually more egregious. There's probably 24, maybe 36 different forms of armor in this game, and I only wore 3. The one you start with, the one you were given about 40 minutes into the game, and the one you get for unlocking a side quest near the end of the game, which effectively ruins the game because you become essentially a tank. You can be killed, but you've got to be pretty stupid to get killed with that armor. Everything else doesn't really make a difference. It's one more thing to collect. Collectibles, weapons, armor, who cares? And then you have the skill tree. Halfway through this game, I had all the skills I wanted. All of them. The ones I didn't get at that point, I collected in the second half of the game, and they made no difference in the game. Nothing affected my playstyle beyond the ones that I looked at and said, I need that, I want that. All that being said, is the gameplay bad? No, it does loosely support a couple different playstyles, and the reality is, everything else in this game is so good that the production of the game overall compensates for what amounts to fairly mediocre gameplay. And this is a common complaint for Guerrilla Games. If you look at the Killzone games, the production of the games was way more significant than the actual gameplay. They were fairly standard shooters. This one is a fairly standard action faux RPG. Does that mean I don't recommend it? No. I do recommend this game. I had a lot of fun with this game. I'm still having fun with it. In fact, I started Nier last night. I turned it off after a couple missions and put Horizon back in, and I'm enjoying Horizon more than Nier. I think Nier has a lot more to it, but Horizon just feels that much better. It feels like a much more complete game, and I feel like I'm getting my money out of it. It is one of the best complete packages of this generation. Is it the best? Not by a long shot. If you want a much better action RPG, go buy The Witcher 3. Oh my god, it's still fantastic. And after all the patches, it is even better. If you have a PS4 Pro, this is the showcase title. I haven't seen anything that is quite as impressive as Horizon Zero Dawn for the Pro. Hitman is a close second. This is Jonathan for Pomegranate Radio. Thanks for listening. I'll see you later.